I'm Jax. And you know what they say about guys who live in suburban America? We all have an Achilles heel, and mine wasn't my mortgage or my crippling coffee addiction. It was a 50-foot length of coated steel cable. Yeah, I know. It sounds riveting, doesn't it? But trust me, that cable was about to become the epicenter of a neighborhood civil war, all thanks to a woman named Carol and my dog, Barnaby. Barnaby is a lab/mutt mix, 70 pounds of pure, golden, joyful oaf. He's a good boy, but he has the attention span of a garden gnome on energy drinks. A short tie-out? Forget it. He'd spend all day looking like a pretzel trying to chase a squirrel, his legs hopelessly tangled in 5 feet of rope. That's why I bought the max-length tie-out the local pet store would sell. The full 50-foot Freedom Line, anchored smack in the middle of our glorious quarter-acre patch of green. It kept him contained, happy, and tangle-free. Problem solved. Or so I thought. Mr. Miller, are you quite finished? I blinked. The first sign of trouble, as always, was the voice, a tightly wound, high C shriek that could curdle milk from 50 paces. I looked up from weeding, don't judge, I was trying to look neighborly, and saw Carol. Carol is the chairperson of our Homeowners Association, HOA, or the neighborhood director of fun destruction, as I prefer to call her. She was standing 6 feet away, wearing a sun visor, sensible slacks, and wielding a 3-foot measuring tape like a broadsword. "Carol," I said, deadpan, "are you measuring my dog?" She didn't miss a beat. "I am measuring the distance his restraint allows him, Mr. Miller, and I'm doing it to code, section 3.A, subsection 2.C, aesthetics and containment of non-compliant fauna." Barnaby, bless his oblivious heart, trotted out to the end of the line, spotted Carol, and let out a happy, deep-chested woof that vibrated her visor. "See?" she said, pointing the tip of the tape at me. 50 feet of unsightly cable running across what should be a contiguous lawn line. The bylaws state, and I quote, "The tie-out length shall not extend so far as to create an eyesore or a tripping hazard for mail carriers or neighborhood children." I leaned on my rake. "Carol, my yard is fenced on 3 sides. The tie-out is for the unfenced 4th side, and I haven't seen a mail carrier cross the lawn since 1987. Also, contiguous lawn line is not a thing." "It is now," she sniffed, retracting the tape with a loud, aggressive snap. "You have 48 hours to shorten it, Mr. Miller. Consider this your verbal warning." She then marched off, the sound of her sensible shoes a martial drumbeat against the pavement. I stared at the spot where she stood, already feeling the migraine setting in. "Okay, fine. I know what you're thinking. Just shorten the tie-out, Jax. It's not a big deal." But it was a big deal, and not just because I hate being told what to do by someone who communicates exclusively via laminated pamphlet. It was because Barnaby needs that space. He's an explorer, a field agent of fluff. A shorter line makes him miserable. The original 50-foot maximum was my salvation. It let him run from the back porch steps to the old oak tree in the corner, which, let's be honest, is basically a marathon for a dog of his intellectual caliber. He'd chase the shadow of a cloud for 20 minutes, and then collapse, perfectly exhausted and happy. That's peak suburban dog life, right there. But after Carol's little measurement spectacle, I got the paper. Oh, the glorious, aggressively printed paper. It was an official notice of violation, stamped with the HOA's Amateur Hour logo, a clip art of a smiling family next to a very green lawn. It demanded the cable be shortened to 10 feet or less immediately. 10 feet. That's the distance from my kitchen sink to the pantry. That's enough space for him to spin around and maybe sniff a single, highly privileged blade of grass. I tried it. I really did. I clipped the 10-foot cable onto his harness. Barnaby took one confused step, his face a perfect mask of betrayal. He looked like a CEO who'd just been demoted to intern. "Barnaby," I knelt down, trying to sound encouraging. "Buddy, it's just temporary. Look, you can still sniff that weed." He ignored the weed. He just stared longingly at the vast, distant territory near the fence line where his favorite squeaky tennis ball was currently residing. He tried to walk, got to the end of the 10 feet, and stopped. Then he sat, let out a noise that sounded like a deflating tire filled with existential dread, and just watched the world go by. I went back inside and called my friend Leo. "They're trying to crush his spirit, man," I griped into the phone, watching Barnaby look mournfully at the suburban horizon. "They've reduced him to a furry, four-legged lawn ornament. It's a crime against canine morale." "Dude, it's a leash law. Calm down," Leo said, clearly multitasking. "Just put up a fence." "A fence? Do you know what a fence costs? Plus, the HOA has rules on fence height, material, color, and whether the pickets must be aligned with the North Star. I'd be building a fence that looks like a miniature, government-mandated art installation. No, Leo. The solution has to be petty. It has to be expensive. And it has to be technically compliant." I hung up on Leo. Sorry, Leo. And made myself a truly awful cup of instant coffee. The kind that tastes like regret and boiled pencils. I stood at the kitchen window, staring at the injustice in my backyard. There was Barnaby, sitting at the end of his tiny leash, looking less like a dog and more like a statue dedicated to slight discomfort. The official notice swam into view on my counter. "The tie-out length shall not exceed 10 feet, and must remain securely fastened to a ground anchor." I reread it. Then I read it again. And again. I didn't see anything about a tie-out. I saw the word tie-out exactly once. I saw length. I saw ground anchor. But I didn't see a single rule that governed a trolley system. I didn't see anything about aerial cables. I didn't see anything about a structure that would allow my dog to traverse the entire 100-foot length of my yard without being limited by a horizontal cable dragging on the grass. The idea hit me like a rogue lightning strike. It wasn't just good, it was perfect. It was the bureaucratic equivalent of a middle finger, delivered with engineering precision. They demanded I shorten my dog's tie-out. Fine. I'll take the tie-out and turn it into a tiny 10-foot leash. But that leash? It's going to be clipped to a Zipline trolley system that runs the entire length of the property. Barnaby gets his full 100 feet of glorious, elevated mobility. And the cable? It will be high above the contiguous lawn line. No tripping hazards. No eyesore on the grass. Just pure, unadulterated, technically compliant freedom. I grinned, a slow, slightly manic grin. Carol was going to lose her mind. I picked up my phone and opened a search bar. Industrial strength pulley system, 70 lbs load for horizontal application. Challenge accepted, you pencil-pushing fun-hater, I muttered, taking a victory sip of the terrible coffee. But where do I even buy a dog-sized zipline? The first step in any truly insane American project is, naturally, reckless online shopping. I was deep down the rabbit hole, trying to piece together a system that was part dog park, part cargo transport, and part suburban spite. I started simple. I needed cable. Not that flimsy vinyl-coated pet store junk. I needed aircraft-grade, 3/8-inch, 100-foot galvanized steel cable. I found a supplier in rural Pennsylvania who sounded confused but obliging. Me, via email. I need the cable, plus clamps and tensioners rated for, let's say, 5,000 pounds. Supplier. Sir, are you hoisting a small car? Our standard industrial safety load for this gauge is 2,500 pounds. Me, typing. No, I'm simply over-engineering a pet mobility solution. Safety first. Then came the trolley. This was crucial. It had to be smooth, weatherproof, and robust enough to handle the sudden stop-and-go maneuvers of a giant, distracted lab mix. I settled on a heavy-duty pet trolley system from a company whose other products seemed to include logging equipment. Me, on the phone to the trolley company. So the dog's harness clips here, to the trolley, which runs along the main cable. Right? Sales rep, skeptical. The standard application is for securing livestock temporarily, sir. Or maybe a very large tool basket. The carabiner on that harness system is rated for human climbing. Is your pet a mountain climber? Me. He's a good boy, but not a climber. Let's just say his freedom requires the structural integrity of a small bridge. Ship it. The irony was not lost on me. I was spending more money and time on this legal workaround than I would have on just buying a regular non-HOA-approved fence. But this wasn't about cost. It was about justice. The arrival of the components was a spectacle. A flatbed truck delivered the two 15-foot poles. A burly delivery guy dropped off a box containing the stainless steel trolley, which looked less like dog equipment and more like a rejected prop from an action movie. And a small padded envelope contained Barnaby's special harness, a neon orange contraption that made him look like a very enthusiastic bomb disposal expert. I stood in my driveway, surrounded by what looked like the raw materials for a small amusement park ride, and realized something important. I am not a builder. I can barely assemble IKEA furniture without crying. I needed professional help. I needed a man who lived outside the lines of conventional construction. Enter Skeeter. I found Skeeter in the most American way possible. A hand-painted sign duct-taped to a mailbox that read, "Odd jobs? No job too odd. Call Skeeter." Skeeter showed up in a pickup truck that looked less like transportation and more like an archaeological dig. He was a skinny guy with a glorious mustache and the weary, slightly desperate air of someone who had definitely installed a hot tub on a third-story balcony before. I walked him to the backyard, past the lumbering utility poles lying on the lawn, and tried to explain the vision. Me. Okay, so the HOA said the tie-out cable is too long. The cable has to be 10 feet or less. So the cable will be 10 feet long. It's clipped to Barnaby's harness, but that 10-foot cable needs to be attached to this trolley right here. I pointed to the shiny steel monstrosity. And that trolley needs to run across the entire length of the yard, anchored on two industrial-strength poles. Skeeter didn't laugh. He didn't even smirk. He just stared at the poles, then at the trolley, then at Barnaby, who was now licking the steel cable. Skeeter. So you want two 15-foot utility poles installed in a suburban backyard for a dog. Me. A legally compliant dog. Think of it as a low-altitude aerial dog run. Skeeter. And you already bought all this gear? Me. Every last, completely unnecessary, beautiful piece of it. Skeeter took off his worn baseball cap, scratched his head, and then a slow, beautiful grin spread across his face. It wasn't the look of a contractor thinking about profit. It was the look of a man about to solve a truly bizarre, deeply American problem. Skeeter. Look, usually I'm dealing with leaky sheds or someone who wants to turn their garage into a tiki bar. But this? This is art, man. This is sticking it to the man with structural integrity. When do we start? Me. As soon as you can. But first we have to talk permits. I need these poles to be sanctioned by the city. Skeeter's face fell. Permits? Jax, I specialize in the kind of construction that happens right after the city inspector has clocked out for the weekend. Me. Not this time, Skeeter. This project is so petty, so ridiculous, that it has to be 100% legal. It's the only way to win. We need an official piece of paper that says, yes, this man is authorized to give his dog the freedom of flight. Skeeter sighed, but the fire was still in his eyes. Fine, but I charge extra for dealing with paperwork. It's a specialized form of torture. If I thought Carol was a villain, she was nothing compared to the city bureaucracy. Skeeter had warned me, but nothing prepared me for the zoning department. The woman tasked with processing my application was Ms. Grundy. Ms. Grundy was a masterpiece of civil service, perpetually dry, unyielding, and utterly devoid of anything resembling humor or compassion. I sat across her desk, the pet trolley system application laid out between us. Ms. Grundy. Let's review, Mr. Miller. You are applying for a height variance for 2 steel utility poles, a setback exception for proximity to the property line, and a structural safety permit for an unconventional backyard application. She stared over her glasses. What, precisely, is the unconventional application? Me. It's a dog run, ma'am. Ms. Grundy. It appears to be a description of a small, unauthorized amusement ride. Please use the standardized, legal language we require. What is the apparatus? I took a deep breath. I'd rehearsed this with Skeeter. You have to speak their language. Me. It is a highly regulated, horizontally oriented, elevated canine mobility apparatus. Ms. Grundy didn't even flinch. She picked up a stamp and slammed it down next to my description. Approved. Terminology. Ms. Grundy. Now, let's address the purpose. Your original permit description called it a zipline for Barnaby. Me. I apologize for the informality, ma'am. Its purpose is to provide unrestricted yet fully contained linear ambulatory freedom for my canine, Barnaby, who was facing mobility restrictions due to a recent bylaw change on ground-level tie-outs. Ms. Grundy. So the purpose is to circumvent the HOA's tie-out rule. Me, leaning forward, confidential. No, ma'am. The purpose is to comply with the 10-foot tie-out rule while ensuring the humane exercise of the pet. The tie-out is 10 feet. The overhead trolley system is a separate, permitted structural enhancement that the 10-foot tie-out is attached to. It addresses no existing bylaw, therefore it is permissible. Ms. Grundy looked at me for a long, silent minute. She hated it. I could see the sheer, burning hate in her eyes for the loophole I had found. But she was a creature of rules, and the rules were quiet on backyard zip lines. She took a red pen and circled the phrase, Elevated Canine Mobility Apparatus. Ms. Grundy. The pole height of 15 feet may interfere with the airspace of the adjacent property. We require signatures from all adjacent property owners confirming they waive any liability for stray tennis balls launched from the structure. I couldn't believe it. Stray tennis balls. I'd forgotten about weaponizing fun. I will obtain them immediately, I promised, standing up. Thank you for your dedication to due process, Ms. Grundy. She didn't look up as I left. I felt like I'd just won a chess match against a spreadsheet. The permits were in hand, complete with a beautiful official stamp authorizing the two 15-foot poles. Carol was going to choke on her hibiscus tea. With the permit secured, a victory that cost me 3 entire afternoons of my life, and a signed affidavit from my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, confirming that she didn't mind Barnaby's tennis balls landing in her petunias, it was time for construction. Skeeter arrived with his crew, 2 guys who looked like they were on a break from a biker convention, but who, I swear, could sink a pole into bedrock using only determination and a very large hammer. The installation was an event. First, the noise. Oh God, the noise. Skeeter had rented a post-hole auger that sounded like an angry dinosaur chewing on a washing machine. The ground vibrated. Neighbors, including Carol, peeked through their curtains with the horrified expressions of people witnessing a crime but not wanting to get involved. Skeeter, shouting over the racket. "We're going 4 feet down, Jax. You could anchor a suspension bridge with these things." Me, yelling back. "Excellent! Structural integrity is paramount for canine exercise." After 4 hours of apocalyptic construction, the two 15-foot poles stood tall and proud, one near the back porch, one near the far fence line. They were beautiful. They were towering. They were, frankly, an enormous middle finger to the entire HOA. The steel cable was strung taut between them, about 10 feet off the ground, shining in the afternoon sun. Skeeter stepped back, wiping grease from his magnificent mustache. Skeeter. There she is, the Barnaby Express. Just the trolley left. You know, I'm gonna miss this. No one ever asked me to build something so utterly senseless and yet so profoundly necessary. Me. Don't worry, Skeeter. We still need the auto brake system. Skeeter. A little something to look forward to. The trolley was attached, and the moment of truth arrived. I clipped Barnaby's special orange harness to his 10-foot, legally compliant lead, and clipped the lead to the industrial-strength trolley. Me. All right, Barnaby. This is it, buddy. Freedom. Just walk. It'll slide with you. Barnaby looked up at the trolley, which was about 3 feet above his head. He looked down at his legally short leash. He looked at the vast 100-foot expanse of grass now open to him. He took a tentative step. The trolley slid. Success! He took another step, a happy little bounce entering his stride. The trolley zipped along the cable. Beautiful! Then Barnaby got distracted. A sudden, deep-seated urge to investigate a very interesting patch of dirt about 5 feet to the left of the cable overwhelmed him. He veered off course. The 10-foot leash became taut. The trolley, designed for cargo and structural logistics, did not gracefully stop. It derailed with a horrifying ksh and ksh of metal on metal. The cable sagged slightly. Barnaby looked up, terrified, and then started walking sideways, dragging the now stuck trolley along the grass. It was worse than a short leash. It was a short leash connected to an anchor 10 feet above him that was currently stuck on a tree branch, creating a perfect, impossible triangle of canine misery. Skeeter, his jaw slack. Well, he sure is contained, but that ain't zipping. Me, my head in my hands. It's an engineering failure, Skeeter. The dog is too much of an idiot for the system. He needs to stay directly under the line. Skeeter. We gotta make him stay under the line. Or, you know, invent dog autopilot. The grand experiment had failed. Barnaby was now a confused prisoner of the very system designed to free him, and he looked pitifully ridiculous in his bright orange gear. The entire neighborhood now had a massive, ugly, failed metal monument to my petty revenge. I had to fix this. Immediately. The first few days after the Barnaby Express initial failure were rough. Barnaby refused to go near the zipline. He'd just sit by the back door and stare at me, his eyes full of the silent judgment only a dog can deliver. I, meanwhile, had become the subject of an intense, passive-aggressive information war. The notes started appearing on my windshield. Corsate's message, my translation. Anonymous, clearly Carol. The aesthetics of the neighborhood are suffering. Large industrial structures are inappropriate for a residential zone. I am losing sleep over your 2 beautiful poles, Jax. HOA newsletter, The Weekly Whimper. Reminder: all structural additions must conform to setback rules. We have had a recent, questionable interpretation of temporary structure. We are looking for any legal technicality to crush you. An actual post-it note on my mailbox. Is this for a dog? Because it looks like an eyesore. Frowny face. Please stop being hilarious. Then came the subtle sabotage. I found a few small nicks on the cable one morning. Not enough to break the steel, but enough to make me furious. Someone, probably Carol in a pair of gardening gloves, had tried to take a pair of rusty snips to my Freedom line. I went back to the original supplier and ordered a steel cable upgrade. Me, on the phone. I need the thickest gauge you have. Something they use on fishing trawlers, and I need it installed high on the poles, well out of reach of disgruntled short people with pruning shears. I spent another Saturday replacing the cable, my face set in a grim expression of determination. The expense was mounting, but the principle was now worth more than my 401k. I was no longer building a dog run. I was building a monument to spite. I called Skeeter back, not for installation, but for protection. Me. Skeeter, I need a solution to keep the trolley on the line, and I need a solution to keep the neighbor's hands off the cable. We're in an arms race. Skeeter. Say no more, Jax. For the trolley, we need to create a guide system, a small, custom-welded cage around the runner wheels. It'll make it impossible for the trolley to jump the track, even if Barnaby tries to do a 360-degree turn to chase a dust bunny. He arrived the next day with a portable welder and a glorious, complex diagram drawn on the back of a pizza box. He worked for hours, humming to himself, turning my industrial trolley into a streamlined, anti-derailment canine carriage. The trolley was fixed, but the bigger problem remained. Barnaby kept stopping abruptly, which yanked the trolley hard against the end stop. That much force was bad for the dog, the cable, and my fragile peace of mind. The dog needed a soft landing. And then, crucially, he needed a gentle nudge back to the starting point. Me. Skeeter, my dog is a creature of perpetual motion, but also sudden stops. He needs an auto-braking system, or better yet, a return mechanism. Skeeter, eyes gleaming. You want a dog-powered ski lift, Jax? I like it. But a motorized one? That'll require electrical permits, and Ms. Grundy will have my liver for breakfast. Me. Non-motorized. It has to be passive. Think Rube Goldberg, but for dog freedom. Skeeter paced, tapping his chin. Okay, we need counterweights and pulleys. Something to create tension going back to the house, but only enough tension to overcome the slack, not enough to drag Barnaby against his will. What followed was a beautiful, chaotic display of scrapyard ingenuity. Skeeter installed a second, thinner return cable running parallel to the main line, anchored to a complex system of gears and pulleys near the house. For the counterweight, he used a large plastic drum filled with water, which was connected to the return cable via an old bicycle chain. Skeeter. When Barnaby walks out, he pulls the trolley, which pulls the return cable, which lifts the water drum. When he stops, The weight of the water drum gently pulls the trolley back towards the starting pole. It's perfectly balanced. It's thermodynamics, dog style. Me. It looks like the inner workings of a Swiss watch that fell into a swamp, but I love it. Dialogue. Focus, Jax and Skeeter. Me. We're building the future of dog mobility, Skeeter. The future is very, very rusty. Skeeter. Rust is character, Jax. Besides, if this ever breaks, Barnaby will just be stuck 10 feet in the air. We got redundant safety nets, though. The whole thing's safer than walking him on a sidewalk. Me. Are we allowed to call the brake system Barnaby's big red emergency stop button? Skeeter. Only if you paint it red. Only had yellow on the truck. Me. Yellow it is. It's an over-engineered passive canine safety brake. We adjusted the water level in the drum until it was exactly the right tension. Enough to retract the empty trolley smoothly, but light enough that Barnaby could easily overcome it with a leisurely stroll. It was magnificent. The whole system was now an absurd, functional, kinetic sculpture of defiance. The zipline worked. It was amazing. Barnaby, after a few confused test runs, figured it out. He'd walk to the end of the yard, trot back, then run out again, the trolley zipping above his head with a satisfying whiz sound. He had the full 100-foot freedom of the yard, and he was, for the first time since the whole mess started, a truly happy dog. This level of engineering absurdity could not, in the 21st century, remain a secret. I was inside, smugly drinking my good coffee, I'd upgraded after the initial victory, when my phone started buzzing like an angry swarm of digital bees. Leo. Text. Dude, your dog is on next door. People are losing their minds. I opened the dreaded Nextdoor app. The post was titled, Canine Cruelty or Engineering Marvel, the new Jax Miller Fiasco. It was a shaky, 30-second video posted by a teenager named Tiffany from 2 streets over. The video showed Barnaby, his orange harness glinting, running the full 100-foot length of the zip line, looking like a ridiculously joyful furry pendulum. The pulley whizzed. The water drum counterweight went up and down like a piston. It was glorious. The comments section was a disaster. Commenter. Comment Carol's account. This is a clear violation of structural guidelines. It is an eyesore and a clear hazard. I have contacted the city inspector and animal control. 7 likes. User Yard Gnome. Dude is a legend. My chihuahua only has 10 feet. We need the blueprints. 148 likes. Ms. Grundy. Official account, probably. The Canine Mobility Apparatus Permit is filed and approved. The structure is compliant with setback rules. 0 likes, but absolute legal authority. User Suburban Rebel 47. HOA tried to shorten my flagpole. I should have done this. Barnaby is my new spirit animal. 210 likes. The Zipline Barnaby video hit TikTok, and things truly went wild. Within 24 hours, the clip had 500,000 views. Suddenly, I wasn't just Jax Miller, the guy with the overgrown crabgrass. I was the Zipline guy, the suburban revolutionary. The irony was that my simple, petty act of defiance had given the entire bored suburban populace something to unite over. I'd given them a hero, a golden retriever zipping above the turf wars. Viral fame is a fickle mistress, and in the case of suburban home projects, it's a direct line to law enforcement. It was 8:00 a.m. I was standing in my backyard, sipping my coffee and watching Barnaby enjoy his morning run, when I heard the unmistakable sound of a police cruiser rolling to a slow stop out front. I walked through the side gate just as Officer Davis and Officer Chen stepped out. Davis was older, slightly cynical. Chen was young, trying to look very serious. They both looked tired. Officer Davis: "Mr. Miller, we received a call regarding animal endangerment and unlicensed construction related to an aerial pet containment system." Me: "Officers, welcome. That would be the highly regulated, horizontally oriented, elevated canine mobility apparatus." Officer Chen's shoulders started to shake slightly. Officer Davis just rubbed his temples. Officer Davis: "We're required to conduct a wellness check, sir. The caller..." Me: "Carol, I assume. The neighborhood director of fun destruction." Officer Davis, a ghost of a smile: "The caller claims the dog is being flung at high velocity into poles and that the structure may fall and damage her prize-winning petunias." Me: "Let me demonstrate. Barnaby, come here, buddy." I clipped the orange harness onto Barnaby's 10-foot lead, then clipped the lead to the trolley. Barnaby, seeing the glorious run ahead, started trotting. The trolley whizzed along the cable. Officer Chen, straining to be stern: "He is moving quite fast, sir. How is the deceleration managed?" Me: "Excellent question, Officer Chen. This is the over-engineered passive canine safety brake. Observe." Barnaby hit the 75-foot mark and then stopped abruptly to stare at a butterfly. Instead of snapping him back, the bicycle chain/water drum system gently countered the motion, slowing the trolley to a smooth, almost graceful stop. The tension held him in place, gently. Officer Davis: "And the structural safety?" Me: "Those poles are anchored 4 feet down. They are load-bearing, certified, and Ms. Grundy herself at the zoning department approved the permit for their height and setback. I have all the paperwork." I gestured toward a clear, laminated folder near the back steps. Officer Davis squinted at the massive utility pole, then at the intricate counterweight system, and then at Barnaby, who was now just sitting happily in the middle of the zipline, gently swaying in the breeze, enjoying the full width of his yard. The police stood there, 2 highly trained professionals, forced to inspect a dog's elaborate, completely absurd and yet technically compliant zipline. It was a beautiful moment. Officer Davis finally lowered his sunglasses and looked at the apparatus, his face relaxing into one of grudging respect. Officer Davis: "The dog appears to be safe, well restrained, and frankly, sir, the craftsmanship is robust." Officer Chen, whispering to Davis: "He's got the permits, Dave. Everything's stamped." Then, for the grand finale, I gave Barnaby the command. Me: "Barnaby, go!" Barnaby took off. He ran the full 100 feet in a sprint, a joyous, golden blur. The trolley whooshed all the way to the far pole, stopped smoothly, thanks to Skeeter's last-minute addition of a spring bumper, and then Barnaby, satisfied, turned and trotted back. He was happy. He was free. And he was 100% legally restrained by a 10-foot leash on a permitted overhead trolley system. Officer Davis watched the entire, beautiful display. He turned to Officer Chen, a tiny, exasperated smirk on his face. Officer Davis: "Officer Chen, sir. This appears to be a structurally sound and legally permitted canine amusement park. The dog is having the time of his life. There is no evidence of animal endangerment or construction violations." He then looked at me, gave a slow, dry nod, and started walking back to the cruiser. Officer Davis, turning back briefly. Next time, Mr. Miller, if you could just build a fence, it would save us all a lot of paperwork. But, nice work. He got into the cruiser, gave me a wry salute, and drove off. I watched them go, a powerful sense of victory washing over me. I had just defeated the combined forces of neighborhood pettiness and city law with nothing but sarcasm, steel cable, and the sheer audacity of my budget. The police visit was the last straw for Carol. It proved that my creation was, somehow, legal. I heard through the grapevine, my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who had signed the tennis ball waiver, that the HOA called an emergency meeting. I received the final letter, a stiff, formal declaration printed on ivory cardstock. It wasn't a violation. It was a notification of a full-scale lawsuit to force the removal of the structure on the grounds of creating an unreasonable nuisance and grossly violating the spirit of the bylaws. They cited every section from aesthetics to acceptable pet containment. My reply was a single, laminated, notarized copy of my permit for highly regulated, horizontally oriented, elevated canine mobility apparatus. I also included a photocopy of my original tie-out box. My short, formal reply. The attached document confirms the Overhead Trolley Systems, OTC, legal standing as a permitted structural enhancement, not subject to ground-level tie-out restrictions. The original tie-out, now attached to the OTC, is exactly 10 feet, in full compliance with Section 3A 2.c. The HOA bylaws do not prohibit overhead trolley systems, nor do they restrict their height on private property once approved by zoning. Your claim of unreasonable nuisance is rebutted by the city's acceptance of the structure and the verified wellness of the pet. See enclosed affidavit from Officer Davis. Okay, I didn't have an affidavit, but the implication was devastating. The silence that followed was beautiful. Weeks later, I got a meekly worded official email. The lawsuit was dropped. The HOA lawyers realized that my canine freedom conduit was legally unassailable. I hadn't broken the rule. I had upgraded the technology of compliance. I had won. And I had won in the most humiliating way possible for them, with superior paperwork. The Zipline Barnaby wasn't just a structure. It was a symbol. My yard became a pilgrimage site. I started getting strange visitors. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years now stopped by to watch Barnaby run. New neighbor, a nervous-looking guy named Todd. Jax? Todd from down the street. We're having a problem with the HOA's mandated shrub trimming. They're demanding spherical uniformity. Me. Todd, you need to find the loophole. Is the rule about trimming or pruning? There's a difference. Check the definitions. Todd. Oh my God, I never thought to check the definitions. I became the unlikely leader of the anti-petty rule rebellion. My phone was constantly buzzing with texts. Dialogue interactions. Mrs. Henderson. Jax, they're complaining about my wind chimes being too loud. Can I register them as a sonic deterrent for yard pests? Jax. Only if you get a signed waiver from the local exterminator and get an official permit for the height. Always permit. The biggest compliment came from Skeeter, who started selling official Zipline contractor t-shirts out of his truck and had lines of people asking for their own structural oddities. Skeeter. Jax, I got 3 requests for custom tree houses and a guy who wants to mount a weather vane on a 30-foot pole. All because of the dog. You started a movement, man. Me. I just wanted my dog to run. And to annoy Carol, everything else is a bonus. A month after the HOA officially conceded defeat, I threw a party. I called it Barnaby's Freedom Zipline Grand Opening. It was a total neighborhood mashup. Kids were standing by the fence, cheering for Barnaby. Todd was there, talking excitedly about his new, aesthetically pleasing botanical uniformity apparatus, a trellis that perfectly covered his non-spherical shrub. Skeeter arrived with a boombox, playing the theme song from Rocky, and was indeed wearing one of his own contractor shirts. I stood by the grill, flipping burgers, and watched my dog. Barnaby, the oblivious catalyst for all this chaos, was running his heart out. He was pure, unadulterated joy. Suddenly, a familiar black and white car drove slowly past the house. It was Officer Davis and Officer Chen. They didn't stop, but Officer Davis gave a quick, supportive flash of his lights, and I saw Officer Chen raise a can of soda in a salute as they drove by. They were acknowledging the legend. And Carol? She was seen through her lace curtains, a dark, judgmental silhouette in the afternoon sun. I flipped a burger just a little higher, just for her. So that's how I ended up with a $5,000, 15-foot-tall, fully permitted industrial-grade zipline in my backyard, all to solve a problem that started with a $15 tie-out cable and a busybody neighbor. Was it worth it? I spent thousands and weeks of my life navigating zoning codes, sourcing metal cables, and negotiating with a contractor whose primary form of payment seemed to be lukewarm beer. I risked a lawsuit. I became a minor viral sensation. I endured the silent, burning rage of Carol and her HOA minions. All to give my dog 100 feet of glorious, unimpeded motion. And you know what? Yes. Absolutely, yes. I stand in my yard now and look at the apparatus. It's an eyesore, honestly. It's a massive, beautiful, ugly monument to human stupidity and American liberty. It's a reminder that sometimes the only way to fight pointless bureaucracy is with over-engineered, hilarious, and legally permissible vengeance. And as for Barnaby, he just runs. Every morning, he runs the full length, stops, gives a happy woof, and zips back. He is the symbol of freedom, the golden dog of defiance, forever gliding across the sky. And you know what the best part is? I never have to worry about the length of his tie-out again. They asked me to shorten it, and I did. I just attached it to the most ridiculously complicated, rule-following, rule-breaking device ever built. Try measuring that, Carol.